C7N is a perfect film. Not great, not iconic, perfect. And the studio that made it spent 18 months trying to destroy it. They almost won. Here are the dark secrets behind C7N and the truth New Line Cinema tried to bury. Number 1. The script was rejected over 40 times. The ending was always the problem. Picture a stack of papers sitting on 40 different desks, 40 different executives, 40 different rejections. Andrew Kevin Walker wrote C7N while working at a Tower Records in Manhattan. Miserable, underpaid, using the city's rot as fuel. The script was ugly. It was mean. It had teeth. And every single studio that touched it handed it back because it committed one unforgivable sin. Evil wins. Nobody in Hollywood wanted to greenlight a movie where the villain completes his mission, where the hero pulls the trigger and loses doing it, where the final image isn't triumph, it's a man being led away from a field, hollow, already gone. New Line Cinema eventually picked it up, but they never stopped fighting it. Then Morgan Freeman read it. He said yes, but only if the ending stayed exactly as written, word for word, scene for scene. No rewrites, no softening, no hero catching the villain before the box gets opened. That condition saved the film. Without it, the studio gets what it wanted. And what they wanted is the part that genuinely hurts. Number 2. The studio's alternate ending would have destroyed the entire point of the film. Here's what New Line kept pushing. In their version, the one they slid across the table again and again, Detective Mills doesn't pull the trigger. He arrests John Doe. He walks him into a courtroom. The system works. Justice is served. The system works. That was the actual note. Take a second and feel how wrong that is. C7N is a film about a killer who uses the justice system as furniture. John Doe doesn't fear prison. He doesn't fear death. He fears being ignored. The studio's ending gives him exactly what he can live with and hands the audience a lie. It tells you the machine is functioning. Don't look too hard. Go home. Fincher didn't want you going home comfortable. He wanted you sitting in your car in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel, not sure you're okay. That's the difference between a film and a product. And the studio was only ever interested in making a product, but the fight wasn't just happening in boardrooms. Number 3. Brad Pitt made a quiet, nuclear demand before a single frame was shot. Brad Pitt was not the obvious choice for this film. He was coming off Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall. Glossy roles, pretty boy stuff. Taking C7N was already a risk. Taking this ending was an even bigger one. So he made a demand. His contract, documented across multiple interviews and production histories, included a clause. The ending could not be changed, not by the studio, not by reshoots, not by test screening feedback. If the ending changed, Pitt walked. Full stop. A movie star used his contractual leverage to protect the most disturbing moment in the film. Let that breathe for a second, because without Pitt's clause, Fincher is fighting alone. And studios have a very specific way of wearing directors down. Not with one big fight, with 100 small meetings, 100 small notes, 100 small compromises until the film you started with becomes something you don't recognize. Pitt closed that door, and the studio went looking for another way in. Number 4. The test screening almost handed them one. This is the part that sounds completely made up. It's not. They screened C7N for a test audience, the kind of audience that fills out comment cards, that rates films on a scale of 1 to 4, that writes notes in the margins like too dark and unsatisfying. When the box scene hit, when Mills raises the gun, when Freeman's voice starts to crack, when you realize what John Doe has done, people broke, walkouts, audible gasping. Someone reportedly threw their drink at the seat in front of them. The studio saw those comment cards and thought, change the ending. Fincher saw those comment cards and thought, it's working. Same data, 2 completely different conclusions. One person is trying to make you feel something real. The other is trying to make you feel safe. One of them is making art. The other is managing risk. The studio scheduled a meeting. Fincher didn't go. And that brings us to the day on set where even the crew didn't know what was happening. Number 5. The final scene was filmed in one take. Nobody rehearsed what came next. The field, the desert sky, the unmarked van. Kevin Spacey had been invisible through the entire production. His name wasn't in any promotional material. He wasn't in the trailers. He signed his contract under the condition that he would not appear in any marketing. He showed up the day they shot the ending, stepped out of a car in his John Doe costume, and the crew saw him for the first time. He delivered the monologue in a single take. The crew went silent. Then Brad Pitt started shaking. Not Mills. Pitt. Cast and crew described watching the line between actor and character disappear in real time. His hands moved wrong. His breathing changed. His eyes went somewhere that wasn't the desert, wasn't the set, wasn't the film. Fincher let the camera roll. He didn't call cut. He didn't reset. He just let it happen. One take. That's what you're watching in the finished film. That trembling, that fracture, that's not choreographed. That's a man genuinely coming apart at the seams under a desert sun while a camera watches without blinking. Nobody coached him back to baseline between takes because there were no more takes. Number 6. Gwyneth Paltrow's scene was almost replaced with something that would have ruined everything. You never see inside the box. That is not an accident. That is a war won by one director over an entire studio system. New Line wanted a visual reveal, something concrete, something that would. And this is lifted almost word for word from actual production notes, justify Mills shooting Doe. They wanted the camera to look inside. They wanted confirmation. They wanted to show you something so awful that the audience nods and says yes. Okay, he had to do it. Fincher said no. Because justifying Mills is the exact wrong move. The moment you give the audience a clear visual reason, a concrete, undeniable thing to point at, you let them process it. You give them distance. You hand them the comfortable position of outside observer. Fincher wanted you inside Mills, feeling it before your brain could argue with you. That only works if the camera stays on faces, on voices, on the sound of gravel shifting underfoot. The box stays closed, and your imagination does something no prop department ever could. It makes it personal. It makes it yours. And that is exactly why the studio hated it. Because they couldn't test screen your imagination. They couldn't put it on a comment card. Number 7. John Doe wins. Completely. Totally. The film never pretends otherwise. That was the final battle. This is the conversation that almost ended Fincher's involvement with the film entirely. Map out John Doe's goals. Go through them one by one. He wants to complete his work. 7 murders representing 7 sins. Done. He wants to force a righteous man to commit the sin of wrath. Done. He wants to die as a martyr, killed by the very system he's exposing. Done. He wants his crimes to be remembered, studied, discussed. 30 years later, here we are. Done. John Doe achieves every single objective. There is no partial victory. There is no last-second stumble. He executes his plan with precision, and the hero of the film becomes the final brushstroke. New Line could not accept this. They pushed for an additional scene after the field, something with Somerset continuing his work, a line of dialogue that signals the world is still navigable, that good men persist even when they're broken, that the darkness doesn't actually eat everything. Morgan Freeman fought them. The line he delivers at the end of the film was almost rewritten to say something easier, something warmer. I agree with both parts. Meaning, yes, the world is a fine place and worth fighting for. Instead, Freeman delivers, I agree with the second part. Half a sentence, half an agreement. One man admitting that the world is not fine, has never been fine, but choosing to fight anyway. That is one of the most devastating things ever committed to film. The studio wanted to add one word, both. One word would have changed everything. Number 8. Fincher has never released a director's cut. That silence is the loudest thing he's ever said. Fincher is obsessive about his work, pathologically so. Alien 3. He disowned the theatrical cut and has spent decades explaining what they took from him. Fight Club, loaded with supplements, commentary tracks, alternate presentations. Zodiac, re-released, re-examined, dissected frame by frame. The Social Network, a film he has spoken about with surgical precision in dozens of long-form interviews. C7 has nothing, no director's cut. No extended commentary, no revisionist conversation about what he would change. When Fincher discusses the film, he discusses process, the friction, the studio fights, the pressure. He talks around it the way you talk around a scar you don't want people touching. Some people read that as pride. The film survived exactly as intended. He won. There's nothing left to reclaim. Other people, and I'm in this group, read it differently. Maybe the film cost something Fincher can't fully account for. Maybe winning that fight, holding that ending against all that pressure, left a mark that doesn't look like victory up close. Maybe some projects don't leave you feeling good even when you're right. The silence isn't emptiness. The silence is the film continuing to work on its director long after the cameras stopped rolling. Number 9. The box was never opened on set. Not once. There was nothing inside. This one doesn't need a long setup. The prop box used in filming was sealed for the entire shoot. No prop was constructed for the contents. No agreement was reached between Fincher, the production designer, and the props team about what, if anything, was inside. The decision was never made because making the decision was beside the point. The box is empty. It has always been empty. Everything you felt in that moment, the dread, the grief, the understanding, the sickness rising in your throat, none of that came from the film. The film showed you a box. Your brain did the rest. Your brain built something specifically horrible enough to break you, pulling from everything you love and fear and couldn't stand to lose. John Doe understood something about audiences that the studio refused to accept. You are the most terrifying thing in the room, not the killer, not the box. You. And the studio wanted to replace you with a prop. Number 10. The film almost had a different title, and the real title almost gave everything away. Walker's original script circulated under a working title that described the film's structure without any mystery. Straightforward, procedural, the kind of title that tells you exactly what you're walking into. C7N, with the stylized numeral, was a choice made to signal something different, something coded, something that looked a little wrong, a little off, even in print. Fincher reportedly pushed for the unconventional spelling as a visual cue. This is not a normal film. Look at the title. It doesn't follow the rules. The studio hated the spelling. They wanted 7. Clean, readable, marketable. Something you could put on a poster without making audiences feel like something was slightly wrong with the universe. Fincher kept the 7. And that instinct, that compulsive need to make even the title feel slightly broken, tells you everything about why this film works and why the studio was never going to understand it. They were building a highway. He was building a trap. The trap worked. It still works. It will keep working long after every executive who sat in those meetings is forgotten. There is a box. It's empty. It was always empty. And 3 people, Freeman, Pitt, and Fincher, spent 18 months making sure you never got to see inside it, because the moment you see inside it, the film dies. The moment the studio wins, you go home comfortable. They didn't let that happen. Sad Venison is 30 years old. It still makes your palms sweat. It still makes you grind your teeth in the final 10 minutes. It still puts you in that field, in that heat, with that choice. And it makes you feel Mills pull the trigger from the inside. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because someone refused to blink. If you survived this video, hit like. Drop a comment below. What is the one movie scene you can never unsee? The one that lives in your head rent-free no matter how many years go by? I read every single one.